let me just say a little bit about these two. You know, I'm always impressed by our practitioners because they have to live what we teach. And I guess I'm going to learn something new today about you. But I always ask them to give us a story. Give us a story about your life and how you use this stuff. So you have two of our, I guess I call you seniors. Would you be seniors now? No? Yeah, oh, sorry. Senior in the right way. Senior in the right way to speak to us today. So I'm sure you have a lot to say, so I'll get out of the way. Come on up, Mary, you two.
Thanks, Joe. That song was great. He said before service started that he couldn't find a song that matched the topic, and it's like that was so perfect.
I'm glad you.
Oh, yeah, it was great. So good morning. And every time I say good morning like that, I have to fight from saying Vietnam. I didn't succeed in fighting off that urge this time. So this month, the theme was sticking the landing. And this is how CSL put it as their summary. At the end of a gymnastics performance, after all the spins and twirls, the gymnasts must land upright on their feet. As the year ends, having explored a grand rising, we land on our feet, grounded in timeless principles. We talked about the elements of air and fire and water, earth and light, the flow of consciousness through thought, feeling, form, wisdom, and spirit. And as we wrap up to start prepare for a new year. So some of you may be surprised to hear that I was a gymnast. And when I was in high school, we didn't have a formal women's gymnastics team, but any chance that I got, I was in the gym on the mats doing flips and twists and walkovers and handstands and use on all the equipment. I loved gymnastics. And then when I got to college, I was a health and phys ed major, and I spent a lot of time in the gymnasium, and I loved the trampoline, and I used to bounce on that and twist and tumble and flip, and any chance I got, I was on the trampoline. I loved it. And the swim coach came walking through one day and saw me and said, "How'd you like to try out for the springboard diving team?" And I said, "I've never done it before, but okay." And I made the team, of course. And I did dive in college and competitively for Trenton State College in New Jersey. Yeah. Yeah. So I know. So when I saw that sticking the landing, I can really relate to that, to physically, and then metaphorically throughout my whole life up until this point, and of course, it will go beyond. So in the grounded in timeless principles, I have a way that I conceptualize the foundation of my life. I have 4 pillars. I have the foundation and the 4 pillars, one of which is Science of Mind, Alcoholics Anonymous, A Course in Miracles, and A Way of Mastery. So those are the outskirts of my foundation, and then the cement in between are all the spiritual principles, new thought, books of all sorts. It all meshes together to give me a solid foundation from which I can build any kind of home, any kind of future, and I can also soar to any corner of the universe, but always have that foundation to come from and to soar from. So I really liked being reminded of that. And then in week 1, we talked about standing on solid air, that everything is created twice, first in mind and then in form. And our thinking and our beliefs have a power influence in our lives. Of course, one of my favorite sayings you'll hear me say over and over again, and you'll read it in the books, is, "It is done as you believe." As you believe. And when I was in my diving time, there was one dive that I had a lot of problems with. And that was when you go off the board forward and you go back towards the board. The board's back there. And you go in the water head first or do a flip or a twist, whatever. I could do a 1.5 with a full twist in reverse. But it scared the daylights out of me. And so every time I let that fear creep in, every now and then I would do a failed dive. And that's when you jump off the board, get scared, and just go straight in the water. It's really embarrassing when you do that in the middle of a competition. When I was grounded in self and fear, in my fearlessness, I could do all sorts of wonderful. I received a couple 4.0s, which in the diving world is a perfect score. And for someone who never had any background in that, I was pretty proud of that. It was pretty cool. And then the next week we talked about hearts ablaze. So getting that fire in there. It says, we are feeling creatures who think. We have all the word, we can have all the words, all the information, all the intellectual, crammed full of facts. Yet it is our feeling heart that is the true source of the power of the one source moving through us, animating our life. We can get lost in despair, delusionment, and even disbelief. Can I do that reverse dive this time? So I have a practice where I remember to remember who I am. I say to myself often, God is and I am. And of course, God is and you are. It's just all the oneness. And I have a story to relate that in the last year or two of my Navy career, I had a situation come up where I decided to be my authentic self. And I had spent 20 years in the Navy. I was on ships. I was in a man's world. I made it in a man's world. I was rough and tough and kick ass and take names later. But underneath, I was really a closet metaphysician. And that doesn't, or at least I didn't think it went over real well in a military community. So I was always trying to fit in. I was trying to be who they thought I should be. And I did real well at it. I succeeded. I've got the medals and the awards and the fitness reports that said I walked on water, but I wasn't happy. It was hard. I wasn't my authentic self. And I had been asking for an early retirement because I had had enough fun and wanted to go home, and they were offering early retirements, and I submitted my applications for 5 years in a row, and they said no. They said yes to almost everybody else, but they said no to me because I was a woman in the surface warfare community that made their numbers look good. And they wanted me to stay on the books. Well, that really pissed me off. So I said, F you. And guess what? I'm just going to be myself. I'm not going to try to play the game anymore. I'm close to real retirement, and I'm just going to be my authentic self. My closeted metaphysical self came out of the closet, and I was my spiritual self. And that was really scary. And you know what? Out of the woodwork came all the other people who were like me. And we were just like, I said, I could have been doing this all along. And why didn't anybody tell me that it would work out that way? So it was a major life lesson to be my authentic self. And I continue to practice that all the time, just not being afraid of being who I am. And then we talked about flowing ground. We think of our world as solid, but homes remind us that we are dealing with a fluent force. We can learn to flow with the liquid law and not be stopped by appearances of solidity. It takes a shift of consciousness and grounding in truth principles to look at solid facts in the eye and say, you are not so real after all. Like Reverend Jerry says, "'Tain't so." "'Tain't so." So a story that relates to that is I quit smoking in 2003. And I had smoked for the better part of 30 years. I smoked 2 to 3 packs a day. I was a chain smoker. I'd wake up in the middle of the night to smoke. And I decided it was time to stop. And everyone I know would advise me how hard it was. It's the hardest thing in the whole world. You can't, almost saying you can't do it. And I was like, "'Tain't so." And maybe that's true in your world, but in my world, it's easy. So I had a couple of cartons of cigarettes, and I smoked each one of them with full joy, full inhalation, not beating myself up about it at all. And I knew that when I got down to that last cigarette, that was it. And that I gave myself permission to be slightly uncomfortable for a week. And that was it. And that is exactly how it worked. I quit cold turkey after 30 years of smoking like that. And that was 21 years ago, give or take. So Wayne Dyer, at least I heard this from Wayne Dyer first. He's not the author of it, but it's one of my favorite sayings. Change the way you think. Change the way you look at things, and the things you look at change. I love that one. That's quantum physics in a nutshell. Change the way you look at things, and the things you look at change. So how I stopped smoking was one of many examples I could give you on that. Then we talked about the incredible light of being. And Reverend Natasha talked last week about all the celebrations that we have in this time of year. and how candles and the light, there's symbols of the light to remind us. And the light within, you can't be extinguished. You can hide it under a bushel, but it's still always there. And there's nothing wrong with the darkness. The darkness, in the darkness we can have all sorts of rest and meditation and contemplation and growth. But the darkness is not a thing of itself. It's something that disappears into the nothingness with which it came when the light is brought to it. It is not a thing of itself, but at the absence of light. And this week, as we contemplate the year of the Grand Rising, we look forward to what's next. How do we take all that we have learned this year and rise into the next? We say that we are open at the top. It is one thing to be open, it's another to expand into that openness. And that example that I shared in the beginning about my foundation, and I can go to any corner of the universe from that foundation. And that any desire that comes through me is God wanting to express. And I have this theory, I guess you could call it, that someday the scientists will prove that there is no time and space. And I think it's got something to do with the black holes. And that how the universe it expands, and it from the outer edges of the universe to it's just the same thing over and over and over again. So I think that every cell of our body has the black holes. So they're all there waiting for us to use them. And that's the basis of the fact why we can treat remotely, because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. We can go anywhere, anytime we want, and someday we'll all know that. It's already true. And someday the scientists will tell us about it too. So, from the time as a gymnast, I forgot to tell you in the I was like a little monkey. I walk on my hands, and I could walk up and down stairs on my hands, and the flips, the twists, the turns, and those twists and turns continued throughout my life story in different ways. The body's a little different than it was back then. But it's still the same thing. And right here, in this moment, I am sticking that landing. The twists and the turns, and here I am. And I'm going to get to teach. I've gotten to teach this last year, and I will continue to have the honor of teaching. There's a class coming up, The Power of Your Word, starting January 8th, Wednesdays at 6. There's a flyer back there. It's on the CSL educational portal. It's on the OHM CSL site, and there are flyers back there, and hopefully we'll see some of you there. And I didn't even keep track of any time, but I'm pretty sure I'm over. If I had extra time, I was going to read to you the Declaration of Principles that Ernest Holmes wrote, and it was published in the Science of Mind magazine in 1927. It's in the beginning of every Science of Mind magazine, what we believe. And I'll just say the last one. We believe in our own soul, our own spirit, our own destiny, for we understand that the life of all is God. And so it is. And I'll pass to Mary.
Good morning. As I hobble up here. So, thank you, Joe, for your beautiful music. That song, I love that in so many of your original songs, you have such vivid imagery. So like I can picture the sailboat and all that stuff, and the one about the baseball one. I love Joe's music. So thank you for being here. Thank you, Jody, for setting the foundation when we were talking, when we met to talk about, our plan for today. She said she was going to talk about the foundation and the 4 pillars, and I thought, well, that's a great, place to start. So I'm going to follow up with that. So expanding at the top, I started thinking about when I first started attending a religious science church. It was in Seal Beach in 1998. I was pregnant with my first daughter, and I went to an AA meeting that was held at that church, and somebody said, hey, you should check out this church on Sunday. And, because I talked about a lot of woo-woo metaphysical stuff, and they thought I might fit in, and I did. And, the focus at that time seemed to be a lot about manifestation, manifesting princes, palaces, and parking places kind of thing. And that was good for me. I was really struggling. Like I said, I was pregnant with my first daughter, going through a lot of emotions, the hormones and everything. And so it really fit. And the idea of like a new way of thinking, a new approach to solving the challenges or, manifesting was entirely foreign to me. I had not, even though I was into some stuff, I was reading self-help and positive books, I just was not aware that if you change your thinking, you change your life, And, so like I said, that was 1998, and a lot of things have happened since then. Just want to sort of share my journey with you. I had 2 more kids. I was married at the time we bought our first home. Then we moved from Long Beach to Fallbrook, bought another home, and then another one. I became a practitioner in 2008. And then in 2009, we lost our home. We had to move from a beautiful, like 1/3 of an acre, 2,000 square foot home to this tiny little condo, 2-bedroom, 1-bath condo. All our kids shared a room. There was a time when I thought we were going to go camping because we didn't have any place. My husband's real estate business crashed, and he got a job at the last minute. We were able to get that little condo. And, what followed after that is we filed for bankruptcy. We got divorced. I lost my job and several jobs in succession after that. I went back to school and finished my degree. I changed careers. I had a failed relationship. Reverend Suzette knows all about that one. I became a substance abuse counselor. So there's some good, but some challenges. My mom got dementia. My brother was hospitalized for 9 months and became permanently disabled after that. Both my parents made their transitions last year within 3 months of each other. It was a rough 15 years. That was after I became a practitioner. I remember Reverend Guy, after I got my license, I was like, what is going on? He said, oh, honey, getting licensed is just the beginning. And, it's easy to see where there's room for growth when we're feeling down, when we're struggling, when we're having challenges. But what about when things are good? You know, do we kind of rest on our accomplishments or do we go deeper? So in looking at some of those like ups and downs that I've had, I came across this this Facebook post. I think I have it up here. Your glass, it says if, but it's is. Your glass is fuller than you think. If you have food in your fridge, clothes on your back, a roof over your head, and a place to sleep, you are richer than 75% of the world. If you have money in your bank, your wallet, and some spare change, you are among 8% of the world's wealthy. If you woke up this morning with more health than illness, you are more blessed than the 1 million people who will not survive this week. If you've never experienced the danger of battle, the agony of imprisonment or torture, or the horrible pangs of starvation, you are luckier than 5 million people alive and suffering. If you can read this message, you are more fortunate than 3 billion people in the world who cannot read at all. So when I look at sort of the ups and downs in my life, you know, and for me, I get so laser focused on what my challenge is and what do I need to do to get out of it. You know, prayer and meditation and journaling and treatment and talking to a practitioner, this and that. But it's like, you know, sort of looking at the big picture. Looking at this makes me really feel wealthy and blessed. When Ernest Holmes, people were talking to him, wanted him to start a church. And he kind of resisted the idea of starting a church. And when he finally did, he said a couple of things. One is that he wanted it to be a teaching order, which is why we have such a focus on classes and education. And the other thing he said is he wanted it to be open at the top. Unlike a lot of traditional churches who believe that God spoke to us a few thousand years ago and it's in this book and that's the last word, right? It should continue expanding. And for me, in the last year, like my life has gotten pretty good. I bought a house. Yay! And I'll talk about that process a little bit later, but you know, I'm looking towards retirement. What am I going to do next in my life? You know, I don't really want to go back to school, although there is one opportunity that Suzette knows about. I don't want to get a promotion at work. You know, it's like things are different. I'm just looking towards different things that I did when I felt like, you know, the world was my oyster. I mean, of course it still is, but, you know, when you're looking at the last chapter or two of your few chapters or decades of your life, your perspective changes. So how do I expand? How do we expand when things are going well? Right? Eric Butterworth said, don't go through life, grow through life. And we should be open to new ideas. It's the impulse of spirit is to grow, and you can see that in nature. Like Reverend Suzette's meditation this morning, you see the trees growing up and reaching towards the sun. That's the impulse. That's the divine idea, is to continue and expand and grow. And just like Jody talked about, the universe is always expanding. So as above, so below. As the universe is expanding, so are we continuing to expand. And not only do we change as individuals, we change collectively. We can all pretty much agree that life today is a lot different than it was 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, right? I remember when I used to drink water out of the hose. Does anybody do that anymore? Now, like my kids are like, oh, your water filter bottle, you need to clean it or change the filter, you know. Jeez Louise. Life is about change. And sometimes it's painful. And sometimes it's beautiful. And most of the time it's a little bit of both. Sometimes it's painful, sometimes it's beautiful. But most of the time it is both painful and beautiful. So, yeah, things are changing. We can see old systems breaking down, or at least the truth is being revealed in a way that it hadn't been before. As a kid, I used to borrow albums from the library, and this is going to date me, but I remember borrowing the album, the soundtrack to Hair, and it had the song Age of Aquarius. And, you know, when I was in practitioner training, you know, they talked a lot about, we don't get into that woo-woo stuff. We're not new age, you know, but I think we are opening more and more to incorporating some of these more woo-woo ideas into science of mind, because we are expanding, right? So astrologers say that we are moving out of the Piscean age that we are in for like the last 2,000 years and into the age of Aquarius. And that was the song that was on that album, Hair, was the Age of Aquarius, Let the Sun Shine In. And I love vocal harmonies. I love sweet Adeline music. And that song was just such a grand, harmonic, you know, production. And the themes of the Age of Aquarius is really about spiritual, cultural, and societal shifts. And that's what's happening, and we can see it. And the themes are innovation, individuality, humanitarianism, technology, enlightenment, equality, global consciousness, along with rebellion, revolution, breaking from tradition, but ultimately spiritual growth, interconnectedness, and collective growth. And that is what we're moving to as a society, as a culture. And so it begins with us. We heal it in ourselves, and we heal it for the world, is what, you know, Science of Mind teaches. And as we evolve in our own consciousness, that's what we're contributing to the collective consciousness. And so as we move into the new year, I think it's valuable to think about what's next, both in the new year and beyond. And I've kind of become an Instagram parent. I'm almost an empty nester. 2 out of my 3 are out of the house, and even the one who still lives with me is very rarely home. And so I send my kids memes and videos and stuff on Instagram as my way of imparting wisdom. So this is what you have to meet them where they are, and they're on Instagram, right? They're not even on Facebook. They're on Instagram. Facebook is for us old folks. So this, I sent TikTok. I sent this to my son, and this was just so profound to me because I have always focused on healing what's broken, right? Strengthening my weaknesses or trying to improve my weaknesses. And this said, you get way more return on investment by maximizing your strengths. I don't know if that's as much of an aha moment for you as it was for me or is for me. It's like, maybe I need to just focus on my strengths rather than focusing on where I need to improve, right? And So the next one, I really like this one too, is the growth mindset. You're still putting the pieces of the puzzle together, but they're open. They're open to new ideas. There's something new that can fit into the puzzle. It's not going there. And you're doing so much better than you think you are. Right? And when things get hard, look back and see how far you've come. I can say for me in my, buying a house, we lost our home, when the market crashed and we were overextended and so on and so forth. And after I got divorced, I never thought I'd be able to buy a home again. It just seemed so far out of my reach for a period of time. And then when I started thinking, well, maybe I could do it, I tried and tried and tried, and it seemed like every time there was an opportunity, it was just out of my reach. Either I didn't have enough for the down payment, or I wouldn't be able to afford the monthly payment, right? And I looked and looked. I looked for 6 years trying to buy a home. And it was like repeatedly, disappointed. And then it finally came together. And when I was like in my last push, I was looking from the border in Campo up to like Murrieta, Temecula, up there, right? Menifee. And I found a place in Ramona. It's a tiny little house, and it is cold. I wake up shaking and really cold. So I'm bundled up, got to turn on the heater and, but anyways, I found a place. I had enough for the down payment. I can afford the payments and, but the process to get there was long. It was not easy for me. And life is really hard sometimes. If you zoom out to get some perspective, you can understand that this too shall pass. The Bible is full of the phrase, and it came to pass. It didn't come to stay. It came to pass. Right? So all of these, the process that we go through, we can see where we end up, walking without that load on our back. There we go. And failure isn't the opposite of success. Failure is part of success. Fail fast and learn. Right? Like, wouldn't life be boring if we always got what we wanted and if it was easy? I mean, I can tell you there are a few relationships in the past that I really thought I wanted, that I look back and think, oh, thank God I didn't get what I wanted. Actually, I was thinking about it. I would be a widow twice if I got what I thought I wanted. And sometimes things seem really big. They seem impossible. And as it's been said, the word impossible is I'm possible, right? And when we break it down into smaller chunks, it's more manageable. So I want to do a little process. Can I get Victoria or somebody to come up and pass some things out? So there should be a pen on your chair or the chair next to you. And I just want to take a moment, if you will, with me. If you're comfortable, just close your eyes. Take a deep breath in. Pause at the top and release. And first I want you to just contemplate and think about at least one demonstration that you've had. Something that seemed impossible to overcome, but you overcame it. And you demonstrated that these principles work in your life. And when you get that in your mind, go ahead and write it on your paper. And once again, just in that place of quiet contemplation, what is a dream of yours that seems impossible? It might be a big trip, a new career, buying a home, maybe starting a garden. It only needs to feel big to you. And how can you break it down into manageable pieces? What's the first step that you can take? And finally, looking forward to the year ahead, what do you want to experience in 2025? What does it feel like? So I'm just going to close with a prayer. I'm just knowing the one life that lives, moves, has its being, its presence, its experience, and its expression is right here, right now. As Reverend Suzette opened this service up with a prayer, I just continue on with that prayer, just knowing that Spirit is living itself as each of us, as me, as this community. It is living and experiencing itself as this life, as all of life in the manifest universe. And the space between that just lies in pure potential, lies in wait for us to speak our word into that potential to create the life that we desire, that we envision for ourselves. So I just know that as we come together as this spiritual community, that we are a mighty force, that we are powerful, and that we just spread this love, we spread this good in our lives, in everyone that we come in contact with. whether it be a smile to somebody on the street, somebody at the checkout counter, in our families, at our workplaces, that we are expressing Spirit in all that we do, in all that we think. For everything begins in a thought. That divine idea in each one of us. For we are that divine idea. Spirit had a vision for us as it desired to express itself as each one of us. And for this, I am just so grateful. I know that the intentions that each one of us is setting for the new year ahead and for even beyond that, looking back at our past accomplishments, our demonstrations, and just taking on those big ideas. I know that Spirit has our back, that we are in that flow of divine good. And I know that as we speak our word, as I speak this word, the intentions for each person today, I speak it into the law of mind. And I know the only thing it knows to do is to say yes to our good, to our highest good. And so these intentions, I just allow them to unfold for a greater and greater good. And I call it forth into being in gratitude and thanksgiving. I say, let it be done. And so it is. Amen. Okay, thank you. And now I invite Joe back.
I'm going to hold you for a second. Jody, come on up here. Did anybody get anything out of their talk today? Wow. You guys deserve it. You know, one of the things that I love about practitioners is their authenticity. You know, and they bring it home, being authentic. That's just so important. And bringing home, not life, you know, we want life to be perfect, but it's not. And so talking about the different things that you both experienced, and then you came through it, and then you became a better person. And to me, that's what life is all about. So I really want us to give a big round of applause to them.